Last time we ventured into the Kostawes region, we received a starter Pokemon from Professor Sago at the Pokemon Research Facility, then made our way through Route 1 where we met, battled, and caught a few of our early route Pokemon, before heading to our first town, Fresca. There we took on the Steel-type gym leader Aurelia and her ace Pokemon Segment, a strange yet familiar Pokemon gifted to her by Porico, the premier sponsors of the region's Pokemon League. Today we continue our journey onto some new Pokemon and unlikely allies. Hi, I'm the Thesterninator, but my friends call me Stern. Welcome to the channel, and now that you're all caught up, we can celebrate your defeat over Aurelia and receiving of the Fresca City Lift Badge. This badge is not only a marker of your experience as a trainer, but free admission into the boardwalk town of Vita. But before we can move on, some of your Pokemon are ready to go through some powerful changes. If you took the opportunity to catch yourself a Chipek upon entering Route 1, then the time has come for it to reach its final stage of maturity. While many Chipek will drill away at logs and attempt to catch a buggy little snack, often they'll end up pecking into the petrified wood that seems to line the region, getting their beaks stuck in the process. This form takes advantage of the sturdy and hardness of the trees, using them as massive sledgehammers to knock out trees and rocks at their base. They'll purposefully seek out the hardiest of trees and drill through to get themselves stuck, so as to introduce this heavy, improvised weapon into their new arsenal. Pecking away at a single spot and hoping for a bite is one thing, but felling an entire tree to search the spoils for a whole nother situation is a brand new thing, and one that this Pokemon delights in. Their wings have had to become strong enough to lift these massive mallets, but light enough to still keep them aloft. It makes sense that the rapid speed and movement of these appendages mimics the sound of a chainsaw, and is often followed by the crashing of a dead tree. For the design of this Pokemon, I went with this heavy, unbalanced type of design that actually takes inspiration from the myth that bees shouldn't actually be able to fly, given the size and wing ratio. I posted an early version of this design to my Instagram about a full year back, and had a lot of people asking questions like how it eats with the wooden mallet attached to its beak. The answer is that it can remove the mallet at any time, using the prongs in the back of its legs to wedge into the wood and pry it away. Still, it's never too far from its stump, abandoning it only when a better one is found. I like to imagine and see this Pokemon kind of in the anime, just kind of setting down the mallet to have a snack, causing the whole ground to shake as it drops this huge weighted stump. I wanted the roots of the exhumed tree to mimic the flames that come off of hammers that we can see in games like Overwatch, with Reinhardt being the key factor in hammer design. The color and cut of the wings and tail make this Pokemon appear almost like an autumn leaf, so that it is able to easily camouflage itself amongst the foliage when staying still. This camouflage tactic, as well as the immense power that it holds when swinging, make this Pokemon a devastating force of nature, and while it can fell a tree fairly easily, it tends to seek out only dead ones inhabited by bug Pokemon, leaving trees for it to build its home in as living testaments to its power. And so, I introduce to you Sledgepek, the pecking Pokemon. This Pokemon has taken up the ground typing as well as its initial flying type. For its shiny, I went with this bluish color, not for anything to do with woodpeckers, but more so just because I like blue jays. They're another bird that tends to hang around a lot in the area, and I wanted to be able to incorporate it somehow. Maybe I'll make a full blue jay Pokemon eventually. I don't know. For the current moment, this is the shiny. You'll also notice that it uses a different type of wood for the shiny as well, and it's gained a little bit of power as it's evolved, with its speed becoming this immense boost that takes out anything that's in its way. But this isn't the only Pokemon in your party to evolve. With Chipek evolving into Sledgepek, the local bug Pokemon have had to adapt as well, and there's none better to do so than Chipetal. This Pokemon has adapted not to better battle it out against its predators, but to better hide itself from them. As Chipetal evolves, it wraps itself in a cocoon made of sawdust and specialized saliva that, when hardened, is near indistinguishable from just any other knot on a tree. Now, when Sledgepek knocked down a deadened tree and this little ball of wood falls out, the Sledgepek is likely to overlook it and allow Chipetal on its new form to survive another day. The mixture of wood and specialized saliva will make this cocoon harder than stone, and able to withstand not only a fall, but an intelligent and inquisitive Sledgepek. Much like how silkworms were harvested for their silk, This Pokemon was once harvested for its casing to make powerful armor, with the wooden casing being called the steel of the trees. Some inspiration for this Pokemon and its design came from the legends that say martial artists would temper their fists to be as hard as iron by punching away at trees. I think that's a cool concept, and I was really glad I was able to bring it in some way. And so I introduce you to Bereedle, its name coming from the term barbed as well as beetle. So it's a little wooden casing that's as hard as steel, and thus it's gained the bug steel type. I know we already have a few bug steel types like Forretress and Pineco, but I really like this one, and I think the typing is really cool. For the shiny, again, it has that different wood type of color, very similar to Chipek's evolution Sledgepec actually. It's gained a heightened special defense as well as a heightened defense to be able to survive those heavy hits, and is just a really cool Pokemon. It's also Plum's favorite Pokemon, weirdly enough. And that brings us to Regank. As Sledgepec knocked down trees in search of bug types, loose berries are always sure to cover the forest floor. That's where Regank would often be the one to step in and take from the spoils of war. However, given their heightened intelligence, it didn't take long for a hierarchy to begin forming, where smaller Regank would serve larger ones. It's believed that over time, these heftier and more powerful Regank adapted so that they could become more sedentary. They lead bands of smaller Pokemon to steal not just berries, but trinkets and coins from trainers as well as Pokemon. There are even legends from time to time that this Pokemon will steal Pokeballs and add the caught Pokemon to their ranks. I'd be terrified to run into one that's captured something like a Charizard or Metagross. They're designed off of the idea of gangs and gang leaders, especially those found in comic books and old movies. I've incorporated the mask of Regank evolving into something more like a ski mask, and the tufts of fur almost mimicking a turtleneck, like those seen on cat burglars and old spy movies. Its tail now has a drawstring, so that it's less likely to lose its prizes, since the greatest threat to this Pokemon's power is its own gang. I did some research on raccoons to get some inspiration for this Pokemon, beyond just funny little bandits, and found that a group of raccoons can be called a gaze or a nursery, which I think is kind of funny given the thieving nature often associated with them. They also live in large social groups, which makes sense for the concept, but these groups are defined as loose social groups, which I think also fits given that this Pokemon tends to steal from its own kind, even within its ranks. While this may make many trainers wary of Regank in its evolution, it's been said that they can actually be quite generous when captured. They perceive their trainer as the new alpha, and they do what they can to appease them. This does often lead to them stealing from other trainers and attempted to gift their findings to their own trainer, but it's all with good intentions. I wanted to design the Pokemon to have this almost sweater type of motif, and its little hands now wearing these white gloves. Again, going for that type of old style cat burglar type of vibe. It's always kind of filling its tail with its findings to the point that it gets so overfilled that it'll actually wring its tail around to carry what it can't fit within. I also like the idea of the drawstrings because it makes it feel almost like a living backpack, which I think is just a ton of fun. And so, without much further ado, I introduce to you Reglutton. Reglutton is the indulgent Pokemon. It's a pure dark type, and the shiny, I probably have a little bit of explaining to do. I was going for something that maybe made it pop out a little bit more, maybe looked more like a prison jumpsuit, but ended up going with this red and yellow, which just reminds me how much that the initial design looks like the Hamburglar from old McDonald's commercials. And you know what? I'm perfectly okay with that. I think that's fine. I think that works out well. As you continue on your journey along the newly revealed route towards Vita, you're stopped by a strange and disheveled man. He will ask if you've heard about the strange Pokemon that have been spotted throughout the region, and you'll tell him that you've heard but have other things on your mind. You are a typical Pokemon protagonist after all. He may scoff, but ultimately he asks if he can challenge you to a battle. As you agree, the battle begins, and his team is comprised of as well as his ace Pokemon, which is the starter Pokemon with a type advantage to your own, but not the same stage. In fact, it's probably time your starter evolved too, isn't it? Let's start with our fire type, Caflambe. As I said with this Pokemon line would be heavily inspired by action movies, with the Fast and the Furious series being a big part of that. High-octane racing and over-the-top action sequences make up this Pokemon's whole motif, and I wanted to capture a lot of that in its middle form too. It's always had this fiery personality, but now it means it. As it's gotten bigger and bulkier, its horns have grown to the point that their fiery energy has actually overtaken most of the skull. It's literally a hot-headed Pokemon. The tail, which was once split into 2 prongs, is now split into 3, not only as a reference to a pitchfork, but also as the fiery outbursts that exhaust pipes will put out. I also wanted to include some nods to actors most notable in action movies like Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson, who seem to have a shared allergy towards shirts made with sleeves. So I created these shapes to the arms that mimic flames, but also give the illusion of torn off sleeves. This design was one that I played with for a long time, maybe even years, but never felt that I got anything that felt, dynamic. I knew that middle stages are meant to feel like these clumsy adolescent age characters, but still, I wanted something that could showcase growth as well as potential. And I think that's the inherent struggle with middle stages. You want to get a line of what it was as well as the direction that it's going. But how do you do that while also incorporating the pattern of giving it its own personality? It can be a volatile situation, but maybe volatile was what we wanted in this stage. So I jumped into it. I had this idea for where I wanted to take this final stage, but ultimately scrapped them because at this point, I've done so many bull-based Pokemon for other series, maybe not quite as many as rabbits and bears given our still running Five Nights at Freddy's series, but still, I wanted something a little bit different. So I gave myself permission to scrap the whole final design and go with something different, and that really allowed me to play with what this design was going to be. Removing some of those limitations, I think, was one of the best choices that I made in looking at this design and allowing myself to have the freedom to make different options on the fly. And so this is Petrol. Petrol's name comes from bull as well as petrol, another name for fuel. It's a pure fire type and the emblazoned Pokemon. For the shiny, I went with this almost stereotypical cow type of coloring, because I think that that's super fun. Although, like I said, I made some changes to the final design, and we're not there yet. That'll probably be a different episode. Right now we're still in the middle stage, but I don't even know if the cow motif works anymore for what I've got coming. I don't know. I'll say this, I'm not going back and redesigning this one because I actually really like it, and that's coming from a guy who doesn't like fire types. So if we're going to evolve a fire type, the rest deserve those evolutions as well. So let's hop in with our grass starter. If you've been following my channel for a while, you'll know that back a few months ago, I actually did a full breakdown on this Pokemon's whole line. But as the channel has grown and I've learned new techniques as an artist, I wanted to give it another go. And so this Pokemon may have a lot of influence from that initial design, but it goes a very different direction. Opening was our grass starter and was based on vaudevillian actors like Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, so I wanted to fit that same vibe with this form. No longer is it the shy and understated performer, but it's now a spotlight seeker who may be the most talented at their craft, or more likely not. But that's not going to stop them from bursting into song and dance at the drop of a hat. It's a drama kid. I designed a drama kid. I wanted to expand that little neckerchief into this flowing cape of moss, like the capes worn by the stars of the 1930s attending a musical or Broadway production. He's all dressed up and nowhere to go. His little pompadour on his head is now a well-coiffed sprig of hair, and he even wears a little mustache of fern leaves, but just don't touch it, because he can't quite grow a mustache himself yet, but he's sure to fashion one when he gets the chance. He thinks it makes him look distinguished. As I've done in so many other videos too, I do ask as viewers to help me out here. What abilities do you think these Pokemon should have? Maybe something that already exists, or something wholly new to the series. Either way, I'm excited to see what you come up with. Just don't let the overly judgy possum Pokemon get to you. He's more afraid of you than you are of him, I think. I also love the little white gloves that have replaced the bare pinkish hands of the previous form, and that ascot that makes it look so much prouder. Just, again, be careful with the criticisms, because while he may look proud and accomplished on the outside, he's still the attention-starved kid that he was in his previous form. There's a lot going on with this design and this character, and I love it. I think he's such a ham. And so meet Dramos. It has the name Drama, it has moss, and it has that flowy verbiage to it, Dramos. It's the pure grass type and the overgrown Pokemon. For the shiny, I went with this more wooden look, and I think this is just such a fun and weird design. It definitely fits that weird uncanny area that some Pokemon fit into, and I love it. I think he's great. But the show must go on with our water starter finally getting its evolution. Much like with our fire starter, I threw the plans out the window for this one. I had some ideas of where I wanted to go, but actually after looking at some of the comments asking if he'd become a mantis shrimp, I thought that sounded like a really cool idea. I kept a lot of the initial designs that I had for this form, like the top-heavy body shape that mimicked both a life preserver and that macho energy that cowboys have and saying it with their chests. He is, after all, based on Western movies. His nervous little mouth has now evolved even into a Clint Eastwood-style scowl that's only going to get scowlier. I swapped out what were once going to be squirt guns for a pair of punching fists, which I know may take away from the cowboy energy because cowboys are gunslingers after all, but I also think it gives him that saloon brawler type of feel. So I'm okay with it. Still gonna play around, still gonna see what I can do, but I really want to incorporate that punchy style for a mantis shrimp, as well as that Western gunslinger type of energy, so we'll see what ends up coming with this. This design was a huge experiment in restraint, as there were so many things that I wanted to do, especially for a Pokemon whose final evolution has been my channel icon for the last 5 months. Speaking of which, if you want to join into our community and see things like channel icons and uploads kind of before they go out, some little teasers and stuff, maybe take a look at our Discord down below in the description. We have a great little community, and sorry, I have to stop saying little, as we're approaching 750 members with 1,000 well on our way. So join our quickly growing community, I guess, where we do things like the weekly art challenge where members share art, the likes of which you'll actually see at the end of this video. For the month of October, every week I'm doing a different challenge so that we can show some fan art in videos released on Monday to show off some of the stuff. This month, we're doing one for each week, and this week we're looking at Ancient as our prompt. But back to the design. Yeah, but experiment on restraint, because if this is going to be what turns in my channel icon, then I have to make it look cool. And so it needed some things to be saved for the next form. I don't want to say I have a favorite of these three, because that feels like picking favorites, but you know. And so this is Scrabbler, the name a combination of Scrapper and Crab. It's the torrential Pokemon and a water type, being that it's our water type starter's second form. For the shiny, I went with that orange that just gives more of that life preserver type of feel, and I really dig it. You'll also notice a little Easter egg that has a star on its chest to mimic the sheriff's badge for that Western type of feel. So I guess the next question here is, which of these starters are you picking? Sure, these are the second forms, but I'm curious if your decision has changed based on what you've seen. Also, what does your team look like now that you've seen the second forms of our early route Pokemon? We have enough here that you could probably build a whole team if the first ones weren't starters. But I'm curious. Let me know down in the comments. What's your team looking like? Who did you pick as your starter? And are you switching now that you know what the second forms look like? And with all that said, it sounds like you know where to find me. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye. Hey, before we go, I want to remind you about the art challenge going on at the Discord where people are turning in some awesome stuff, like Gym Leader JC's really cool mummy-inspired designs, a 2-stage line that you can check out here following our ancient prompt. Rodrigo also hops in with this design that I just love. It's so unique and inspiring. Bob went ahead and gave us this really awesome ogre-type Pokemon that I am astounded by. We also have Sunny D, Not the Drink, giving us a 2-stage bug line over the ancient prompt that I just love. It's really cool. I love the human features mixed in with that bug aesthetic. We also have Nair, who gave us this mushroom Pokemon designed off of a very specific mushroom type. We also have this Anteater created by a user who goes by Karma. Salvrus gave us this 2-stage ghost line about this little stone totem thing that I just love. I can't get enough of it. Very cool. Turns into this monkey aesthetic. Very fun. JT gave us this pyramid-based Gizinx? I like the name. I love the name a lot. Nerdy Weasel gave us this design. You know how I love my rocky building type Pokemon. TX Good gave us this Evil Eye inspired Pokemon. We also have a primitive Stunjourner by Kirby the Frog. Obsidian Fox coming in with Ancient Sapien. Look how cute that thing is, just amazing. DGO giving us this 2-stage bird type design based off of Nazca lines, I believe. And Liam coming in with both clock-based Pokemon. I kind of gave this to them as a challenge and they blew it out of the water. Just astounding stuff from Liam as always. G Wolfster giving us this superb, like almost Tropius inspired Pokemon. Mice gave us this Jester Octopus, which I am in love with. Evan the Frosty gave us not one, but 2 different ship Pokemon that are designed to kind of fit together to create one big boat. And I don't think it's biased to say I love them because the first one shares my name. We have this Ancient Genie's Lamp by Hunter Giratina, which expands into this like huge version. I think that's so cool. Isaac RSTOP gave us this fish design with the trident top. That's amazing. We also have Spearock created by Blue Artist. I think it's so fun. And Egg creating this skeletal crocodile type Pokemon. Bite gave us 2-stage Pokemon designed off of the original jack-o'-lanterns for Pumpkaboo and Gourgeist, which were like onions or garlic or some other type of vegetable. Biffskit gave us this awesome ghost ground like architecture design. And of course, Crimbo, as always, gave us this cute little adorable little ghosty guy not wanting to get stepped on and just kind of hiding. Thank you guys so much for all this fun fan art. It's been a fun challenge, and stay tuned because there's another one this week. We're going into fairy tales.